All right, this is, you guys here? This is episode 15. I'm going to get this a little higher.
When you have questions, put them in the comments. Wouldn't do it live. What's up, Fastlanders? I'm Ryan Daniel Moran. Today we're going to look at how you start a business when you're not old enough to drink. We'll be taking live Facebook questions. We'll look at how to find your passion, and we'll look at a six-figure business that sells physical products to people that meditate. We're going to manifest some more profits. Let's manifest that intro music. I started my first business when I was 18 years old on my parents' dial-up computer in our living room, hand coding a website, learning HTML on the fly. There was no WordPress, there was no YouTube, there was no Facebook. There was me on a dial-up computer trying to rank websites on Google. I constantly hear from people that business is getting harder, that things are changing. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Bleep that out. So, business is always going to change, but I believe it is getting easier and easier, especially for young people. So I have a pretty decent following of people who are under 21, and I get asked the question a lot about what would you do differently if you were young, or how would you start a business today if you were not even old enough to drink. And I say young people today have it easier than any other generation, not just like let's demonize millennials. I mean, you have it easier in terms of starting a business. The opportunities to be an entrepreneur if you're a young person are wide open. And I believe 30 years from now, we probably won't have 9-to-5 jobs. They're a dinosaur. They're going away. They're either gonna all be remote, or the structure of jobs is just going to change because mostly everybody will be an entrepreneur. Not an entrepreneur in like building businesses, but everybody is on their own. We already see this happening. We see people who are traditional employees who are leaving their jobs and taking their old employers on as clients, because that is a more even value exchange, right? The person who is providing the value is deciding how much they're going to charge, and the employer, the person who manages the capital and the sales, determines if it's worth it or not. And it's easy to end the relationship if they decide to. And that is becoming more and more the norm. I think in 30 years, that will pretty much be the structure of most employment, and we won't have traditional 9-to-5s. That's not something that we should be afraid of. It's actually something that we should embrace. It's a good step forward. But look, there are people today who make 6- and 7-figure incomes playing video games. Why? Because they stream them on YouTube. My 2 nephews, who are both under 6, would rather watch kids on YouTube play with toys than for them to play with toys themselves. We are living in a golden era in which you can have an audience regardless of what you want to talk about. Today's case study, we're going to talk about a couple that sells physical products to people who meditate. You can sell physical products to any group of people, and we'll go into exactly how that works and how anyone can start one of those businesses. That is the beauty of today, because literally anyone can do it. So it doesn't matter if you are 18, 14, 44. Business has been completely disrupted in terms of what it takes in order to get started. I did a podcast recently with a father-son duo, the McGraw family. And they started a business. The father put up the capital, the son did a lot of the work. And they said, you know what would be cool is if we sold 1,000 units, or let's dream really big and do 10,000 units of a product. They ended up selling 100,000 units of a product and counting. That 15-year-old son now manages $1 million a year business. Why? Because whether it's you're 15 or you're 19 or you're 90, business is the same, and literally everyone has access to the same tools. When I started my business, I didn't even have platforms to build websites. I was hand coding them. We have an abundance of them now. We have more abundance to capital. We have more abundance to crowdsourcing. We have more abundance to vetting your idea. We have the ability to have audiences and to sell things to those audiences, which is how I believe every business should launch. None of that existed in 2006 when I was 18 years old, hand coding this from my parents' dial-up computer. And all of that is accessible now. Young people today have more opportunity than has ever existed before. And this whole narrative about there not being opportunities or opportunities going away is misled and misguided. There are more opportunities than ever before. They're just changing, and they will continue to always change. We shouldn't resist that. We should embrace that. Today we are taking live questions on Facebook Live. So if you want your questions submitted for upcoming episodes of Freedom Fastlane TV, make sure you are subscribed over at facebook.com/freedomfastlane. First question from Facebook Live: what's a really good way to find your passion? I'll answer that question with a question. Why do you want to find your passion? A weird second question, but I ask you this because there is this kind of weird idea that I think is mostly BS, that you've got to find a passion or there's a passion floating out there that you've got to discover. It's kind of like saying, how do I find my life path? There is no life path. You're creating it as you go. It's like, what's the best way to build a business? However you do it. You're building the plane as this thing is flying. So there is no passion out there waiting for you to be found. There is only what you pay attention to and what you cultivate. So what you really want is to find happiness and fulfillment. You don't want to find a passion. You want to find fulfillment. You want to experience excitement. So follow that. Follow the emotion. What gives you excitement? What gives you joy? Because there is no magical thing out there that once you find gives you those emotions. What you want is the emotions. So follow the things that trigger those emotions, and then you will find lots of passions and probably too many to choose from. Andrew Picard asked, what's the fastest way to passive income, even if the passive income is small at first? There's two ways that I could address this. First, I believe that passive income only comes from investing. So first thing you could do, allocate a small percentage of your take-home pay, either from a business or from your paycheck, preferably 10% or more, and put it into automatic places of income. This could be a real estate investment trust, it could be bonds, it could be dividend paying stock. These are all places where you're just gonna park your cash and you're gonna sit on the income. But the other way that a lot of people talk about passive income that is not really passive is working really, really freaking hard for passive income. And that's like building niche sites where you sell affiliate products, or you have a YouTube channel where there are people who are sponsoring it. These are places where income comes in, but you don't have to work for it once the hard work is up front. But you still work really hard for that passive income. So where are you working really hard that could be monetized? Do you have a large following? Do you have a lot of customers? And this is just the simple question of, where do I monetize the assets I'm already building? Or another question, are you building any assets that could be monetized long term? Because if not, then we've got to address how we do that so that you have a business that you can monetize. So that's what most people talk about when they mean passive income. How do I work really hard so I can monetize it later? And we got to look at where we're spending our time and where we're building an audience or where we're building assets that can be monetized. But on the immediate side, take a small percentage of your take-home pay, whatever amount that would be, and put it into real estate investment trust, any place that is going to pay automatically without you having to think about it. Ty Korf asked on Facebook, how do you manage your time with so many different projects? Actually, I have way more projects than I talk about here on the show or on the podcast. Probably way too many because I like to start things, But I have a new way that I have learned to kind of manage my time that has been really liberating for me. And that's twofold. One, I have identified what I'm really, really good at and what really, really jazzers me up. And that is building an audience, doing stuff like I'm doing right now, and coming up with ideas. So I'm naturally gonna be a starter, which means I need to be surrounded by people who are not fast starters. So identifying what I'm really good at, and then I block out intentional time where I am only doing that. So I follow a Dan Sullivan principle, which is dividing my time into free days, focus days, and buffer days. Free days, I'm not allowed to think about work. Right now for me, that's Saturday, Sunday. Hopefully I'll work in a third day in there soon. Focus days are where I'm focused only on my unique ability, which is building my audience. Today is a focus day, see what I'm doing? And coming up with ideas, brainstorming how a business could be improved, new ways that we could monetize the traffic, new ways that we can grow that business, and then working with my partners to be able to implement those. And then buffer days, which is all the other stuff that I have to do in order for me to be fully present within my unique ability. So email, meetings, all the things that I've got to do just to get off my plate so that I can go back to my unique ability. That's how I am managing my time right now, and I found a lot of freedom in that because I save my buffer activities for the buffer day, and my day where I can focus, I am fully able to focus, and that has been a big shot in the arm for me recently. Martin Absalon asked, how do you get the best people to work in a small business? This comes down to culture. We did a great podcast with Cameron Harold, who basically specializes in exactly that, getting really good people to work in small businesses, taking small businesses from 1 to 5 million to 50 to 100 million. He works with physical product sellers, people who follow our stuff, go to Cameron when they're ready to scale. He also works with COOs and general managers of companies to help them really learn how to run businesses effectively. And he says that it all comes down to culture. It all comes down to creating the type of atmosphere and workplace that attract the right people. I would add to that the right mission, the right story, the right messaging, the right reason why you exist is part of your culture. Because when you stand for something that is more than just the buck, and there's nothing wrong with the buck or standing for just money, but when you do stand for something else, something that meets the other needs of your team members and your employees, that attracts a different type of person. Because then you're not just competing on how much you can pay one another, you're competing on what is going to be the best life for the person who is joining your team. So by focusing on culture and focusing on the other areas where you serve an individual and make their life better, that is how you can attract higher quality talent even if you're a small business. For more on that, make sure you subscribe to the podcast over at freedomfastlane.com or freedomfastlane.com/iTunes and listen to the episode with Cameron Harold where he speaks exactly on how small businesses can attract good talent and grow even from the one-person show to an 8 or a 9-figure business. That's been his specialty, and that's why it was a very well-received episode of the podcast. So grab that over at freedomfastlane.com/iTunes. This is the part of the show where we look at one of our students' businesses and we see where we can manifest more money into their business. And I say that because today's submission is from Trevita.com. Trevita sells physical products to people who meditate. What do people who meditate consume? See, you can sell physical products to anybody, any group of people. This is why when you're building a brand, I recommend you start with the person. What does that person need? And then we address what products to sell to that person. So Trevita sells meditation cushions, essential oils, diffusers. These are all things that people who meditate are gonna have in their living room, right? So Trevita is selling about $20,000 to $25,000 per month. They have an audience of about 5,000 people, and they're looking at how do we grow this thing? Well, Mike and Lena, owners of Trevita.com, I took a look at your Amazon store. I took a look at your following. You're doing a really good job of engaging your audience through content. You're doing a really good job of building up the audience on Facebook. Your branding is really good, or at least good enough. Here's where you are missing a big opportunity. You are simply not being aggressive, at least aggressive enough in my opinion, at promoting your products specifically on Amazon. Now you've got the audience side figured out. You could probably leverage that audience a little bit harder to sell more product, but where you are simply not being aggressive enough is in your review getting strategies and your product promotion strategies. If I were you, I would walk into this business and say, what are the 2 products that have the highest profit margin? We are gonna blitz this thing for 90 days. We are gonna give away tons of product. We are gonna do whatever it takes to get 250 to 500 reviews. We're gonna do whatever it takes to rank for these keywords. You've been sitting on the sidelines for too long without having that amount of focus and aggressiveness. If you were to go all in on just that for the next 90 days, those 2 products that you pick become bestsellers, and then it's gonna give you the profit margins to duplicate that process over on every other product. So whether that is giving them away to your email list, going to giveaway lists, going to Zon Blast and Viral Launch, going out to these other places where you can give away as much as possible to grease the Amazon algorithm, get those reviews from those people, that is how you are going to be able to make these products viable. From those profits, you'll duplicate it over every other product. That is gonna give you the customer base. It's gonna give you the momentum to roll out even more products. It'll even give you the profitability to be even more aggressive with the content strategy that you are doing, to be able to spend more money on Facebook to boost your content, to be able to spend more money to get more subscribers and more Facebook likes. And this is where the snowball really starts to pick up. Most people, and this is what you're doing right now, is just throwing products up, hoping they take off, and doing a few things without any really focused effort on what is going to drive the growth of that business. So for you, that focus needs to be on those 2 products that have the highest profit margin. Blast them, give them away, get the reviews until you're on the first page for all your major keywords. Take those profits, duplicate that over every product, and you could have $1 million business a year from now, probably even sooner. One of the cool things about this case study, and one of the things that really lights me up, is working with entrepreneurs who already have the product and it's not moving in the way that they expected, but they've done all of the hard work that it takes in order to get that product out there and selling. That really lights me up because we can steer them from that point. If you're the type of person, or you're the person that has an idea in your head but it's not in the world yet, we specialize in this. We do something called the Brand Builder Bootcamp, where in 90 days you'll go from, even if you don't have an idea, to having a product out there and selling regularly. And this is how everybody starts. And that's over at freedomfastlane.com/bootcamp. If you're the type of person who has a product out there, but you're not scaling as fast as you want, we've helped over 200 millionaires who have products out there but they haven't scaled yet. We've helped 200 people go from there to running $1 million business. And you can join our tribe where we can partner people with capital, or people who will promote your products, or people who are way ahead of you and following cutting edge strategies. We have really dialed in the process of what it looks like to go from one product to having $1 million business. And you can apply for the tribe over at freedomfastlane.com/tribe. We focus so heavily on entrepreneurs because we believe that entrepreneurship is the one thing in the world that actually makes everything better. It makes you better, it makes your employees better, it makes your customers better, because it is a value creation process and there is no limit to the amount of value that we can create in this world. That's why there's no limit to income, there is no limit to growth, there is no limit to the amount of a better world that we can create. But I believe that all of that comes from capitalism and entrepreneurship. It comes from you. That's why we do this. That's why we appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.